recording this computer. Yes, I'm recording now.
Great. Okay. Thank you for your patience, everyone. That was quite the train wreck. I will call this meeting of the Solid Waste Special Service District Number 1 to order at 3:33.
4:33 our time.
4:30. Thank you. 4:33 Mountain Standard Time. Present are board members Kaylin Jones, Kevin Fitzgerald, Diane Ackerman, and Chad Harris, and district staff Evan Tyrrell, Jessica Thacker, Chris Scoville, and LJ Blackburn. The first item is citizens input. Are there any citizens in the waiting room who would like to address us? If so, please turn your video on. In the meantime, we can read into the record comment received that was for the purposes of public citizens input. And I believe there was a couple of those. So how long is this? Oh, we've got quite a bit. All right, so I'll try to give a quick reading. Dear Solid Waste Special Service District board members, first, thanks for your service on the board. Improvements in the recycle center over recent months are impressive. Thank you for your contributions to that. I support the development of a community-wide composting program. While home composting can work, our dry climate and smaller home compost piles make it difficult to attain optimal temperatures and conditions for composting. From all that I've read, composting is easier and makes more sense at a larger scale. Further, reducing food waste going into the landfills is always a good goal. Many Grand County residents have vegetable gardens and landscaping that require soil supplements, and while limited bulk compost is sometimes available locally, it is not abundant or cheap. The option of buying compost in plastic bags is obviously less than ideal with regard to generated plastic garbage. I believe that there would be many buyers for inexpensive, bulk, locally generated compost. It would be a great service to the community. I would certainly be one of those buyers. Thank you, Mary Moran. Comment number 2. My name is Erica Geiger, and I have lived and worked in Moab for 9.5 years. I am writing to ask Solid Waste Special Service District to work towards a composting program in our area, Moab, Spanish Valley, Grand, and San Juan counties, directly and indirectly via collaborations. When I first moved to Moab, I asked Monument Waste if I could opt out of trash services. I generated 1 small plastic grocery bag size of trash a week, if that. Of course, they said no, and I actually was thankful because it turns out my 2 gigantic sycamore trees generated more than enough drop biomass, these bark, branches, seed balls, year-round to fill that trash can. Still, as a biologist and conservationist, it was agonizing every week to throw plastics and non-recyclables into the bin every week. As a gardener, I did compost my own food scraps and the landscape biomass that I could. The volume was simply too much to handle. Eventually, I did find a local farmer in Spanish Valley to take my tree leaves. So every week we fill up the bed of our truck and haul them away. For anyone who doesn't have sycamores, you clean up leaves every week from October, November through March, April, because they like to torture you week after week rather than dumping all the leaves at once. In my neighborhood, my guess is that there are very few people who would take the trouble to compost their own yard waste or drive 30 minutes every week to take them somewhere to be composted. Knowing what a benefit compost is for amending my own garden, the potential for composting on a larger scale could be so beneficial for amending city trees or to offer to citizens or other groups, e.g. community gardens. It also seems like the benefit of not filling up the landfill was something that could actually be reused as environmentally and financially logical. I realize there are many hurdles to overcome to implementing a composting program, including funding and especially educating people on what is and isn't compost, but the long-term benefits of less landfill, reduced chemical inputs of fertilizers too, and improved health of city landscapes and local compost products would be an incredible step for this community. Comment number 3 is from Ross McCann. According to the USDA, America's food waste is approximately 40%. As that waste decomposes at our local landfill, it releases methane, which is 28 times more potent than carbon dioxide as a greenhouse gas. Given the amount of food wasted, the greenhouse gas contributions in doing so, and the lack of any return on investment, a community compost program via row composting in vessel or potentially even vermicomposting would be a win-win for our community. Our soils would greatly benefit from the amendments that a composting program could provide with an efficient in-vessel system such as that being used by USU. We could even break down compostable ware such as that used at Moonflower at certain local events. I'm ready to urge that community composting be prioritized within the 2021 budget. Comment 4 is from Sarah Milnikoff. I was thrilled at the success of the ARD Cash for Cans event. Although things were scaled back due to COVID, I envision great additions to future Earth Day and American Recycles Day events. The CRC is truly a community treasure. From the Great Recycled Garden to the weekly e-waste collection to the potential for adding plastics number 5 to the overall great condition the center is in, all speak to potential being realized and a healthy community resulting from our collective efforts. Thanks to Evan, the staff, and the board for supporting events like Cash for Cans. Comment 5 is from Inder Coppola, and in parentheses, Rebecca Broughton. Hi, I'm writing to express my strong support for using funds to implement a district composting program. This would be a huge step in a sustainable direction for our community. Next comment is from Liz Ballinger. I'm writing to ask you to please proceed with a composting program for Moab. While it may be more expensive at this juncture, it will pay off in the long run in a number of important ways. Granted, not all of them are monetary, but they are still important. Moab should support local food production, urban forests, and water-conserving landscapes. Our native soil benefits greatly from amending, and large quantities of readily available compost can help in these goals. Making local compost provides local jobs, income, and wealth creation from conserving and using carbonaceous resources locally rather than landfilling them. Compost can decrease irrigation water use by improving rainfall absorption and retention and allow plants to better survive brief periods of extreme temperatures. The city is poised to redesign downtown streets in part to increase the urban forest. Doing so well will require heavy amending of the limited space afforded tree roots. The city will be a ready customer, and the compost will support an expanded tree canopy with its cooling and the habitat that provides. And it will help contribute to Moab being a green community, something we are proud of. Thanks for considering. And lastly, Bob Van Deren. I would like to provide my input on composting locally. Currently, I often discard a lot of compostable materials into the local landfill, which really seems to be a waste in shortening the lifespan of the landfill. I support local food production, urban forests, and water-conserving landscapes. Our native soils benefit greatly from amending, and large quantities of readily available compost can help in these goals. Making it locally provides local jobs, income, and wealth creation from conserving and using carbonaceous resources locally rather than landfilling them. Repeats the previous comments verbatim, ending with, the city will be a ready customer and the compost will support an expanded tree canopy with its cooling and the habitat that provides. Please, someone refresh my memory. That was the ones that Jessica forwarded this afternoon. Was there another one earlier, or was that included in this compilation?
That was included, right? The Mary Moran or whatever?
Yes, that was all of them.
Okay.
Okay, great. A lot of interest in composting from the community. Next up is approval of meeting minutes for October 21st, 2020 regular meeting. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the draft minutes for October 21st, 2020, as written in the November 19, 2020 board packet.
Thank you, Kevin. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, I will call for, and as usual, a roll call vote. Starting with Kevin.
Yes.
Chad,
Yes.
Diane, you're muted.
Yes.
Caitlin, yes. Motion passes 4-0. We're into the treasurer and financial section. B, approval of expenditures for the month of October 2020. Evan, is there anything you wanted to point out before we act?
So this is the supplemental attachment. It's not part of the board packets that we've discussed in the past. A couple high dollar items. We had the first lease payment for the motor grader of $12,375.29. And we also paid the Red Desert Land Surveying Company for the surveys that performed for Moab and Klondike landfills. I keep forgetting to present those. Third quarter accounting support from Velo Chase, and a monthly rental for the D6, which we no longer have, unfortunately. Other than that, mostly routine expenditures, 2 payroll periods, including tax payments, URS deposits, and a month of Grand County benefits.
Thanks. Any questions from the board, or I'd entertain a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the expenditures of October the 20th, October 2020, for $118,097.
Thank you, Diane.
And 7 cents. And I'll second that.
Thank you, Kevin. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. Diane?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Chad?
Yes.
Kaylin, yes. Motion passes 4-0. Review and discussion of draft 2021 fee structures and schedule public hearing. Evan, would you like to present on this?
Yes. So this begins on page 12 of the board packets. So I've drafted updates for Klondike, Moab Landfill, and the Recycling Center. The only change that is currently being proposed for the Klondike Landfill, I'm getting some feedback from something, is to adjust the price to basically normalize the price for all commodities, to bring the waste grease up to the same rate as the MSW and biosolids rates. This is at a first pass. Looking at the budget, it raises some other questions as well. However, the waste grease, we have to actually manage that in 2 ways. So one, it gets dumped into a separate lagoon type area that allows it to infiltrate the ground, and then once that dries up and absorbs into the dirt, we actually have to relocate that material to the working face and bury and cover like any other trash. So there's actually more than, it doesn't get placed at the working face, it gets placed in an area that needs to be transported further. So as I mentioned before, even biosolids are more expensive to handle than just the regular MSW. But the main change here is just to normalize the rates for biosolids, waste grease, and MSW to be the same amount. So the waste grease would go up from $32 per ton to $38 per ton. And then I specified a large animal carcass. I added a zebra. I actually had a zebra come from a hole in the rock earlier in the year. So thought that would be important to maybe add zebra there. So so that's it for Klondike. Any questions on Klondike landfill fees?
Thank you for explaining the zebra. I thought that was a test to, if we were paying attention.
Okay, so I'll move on to the recycling center.
Oh yeah, please go on.
So for the recycle center, same hours. So similarly as we've done with the rates for Moab landfill and for the recycle center for like e-waste and so forth, we have a commercial versus a residential rates. So for next year, I'm proposing that we increase the commercial rate by $1 per yard and decrease the residential rates by $1. So therefore, inbound cardboard from commercial would be $5. Inbound cardboard from residential would be $3. And there hasn't been much. So we're consistent with charging commercial customers for bulk loads. I mean, usually they're 3 yards or more. Residential, we've not, we usually don't receive that much material. So whether or not we might, get some arguments on this perhaps, but also if we have, as I built into the budget next year, the sponsorship program for the CRC, what does that mean for these rates as well as another kind of question. So this is, these are drafts, recommendations, placeholders. E-waste, universal waste, I put in here to clarify that it's every Saturday now. I think that's worth retaining. It's spread out, the inbound material, and we're collecting more, but it's not requiring excessive staffing to do it on a weekly basis. I'm working out the bulb prices. So just last week we received not one but two, which we weren't expecting, but a bulb crusher vacuum type machine that uses filtration that actually hooks up to a 55-gallon drum. And as part of that, we'll be able to at least reduce our prices for the bulbs to what I've shown here. So CFL is going from $1 to 50 cents. 4-foot's going from $1 to 50 cents. 8-foot bulbs going from $2 to $1. And there's a possibility we could actually decrease them more. So we need to use this vacuum. So it's basically a big vacuum. It's got HEPA filters, and it's got carbon filters, and it sucks out the mercury vapors as it goes. So it's not, and that's the main concern with these bulbs. And then there's a flat rate to get rid of the material in a drum, 55-gallon drum basis. So we've yet to train the staff and use this tool. And so I'm gonna have them count the amount of bulbs that go into this thing that fit in there. And that'll help us to establish pricing for this for next year. Does that kind of make sense? So it's a bulb crusher, goes on top of an open top metal drum. It's got a vacuum, the bulbs just suck in there and it fills that drum up. And then Veolia, who's our main vendor for household hazardous waste, they have pricing, we have the price for the drum, the price for the solidification of the materials. So, and I think that could really help us to grow that program and to keep those harmful materials out of the landfill. And the main concern with mercury vapors in these bulbs is that it actually adds to methyl mercury in the atmosphere that gets in waterways and it bioaccumulates in organic species, carbon containing things and so forth like that. So, so those are preliminary. I think we can at least get to those prices. So I added a minimum bulb fee. So we actually have it's consistent, the battery e-waste bulbs. So if they have multiple items, it's just a minimum fee overall. And then the other thing I just wanted to specify, because we do get these in a lot. So as part of the e-waste, we can't accept radioactive materials, which includes typically smoke detectors. And our pricing to get rid of those is it's like $90 or $80 per smoke detector, because they have americium or radioactive elements in those. So we could try to offer that. No one's going to pay $90 to get rid of one, and we'll lose a lot of money if we take them in at a cheaper rate too. So, any questions on the recycling center stuff?
Well, I was going to bring it up. I realized this applies to multiple fee schedules, but it seems like we may want to, or you may want to modify the hours of operation and events throughout the year, and that doesn't require the same approval process that our fee schedule does. So, I guess technically you could probably republish this if the hours of operation change. If it is important to have the hours on the fee schedule.
Yeah, I kind of like it as a go-to, and like Moab landfill will actually hand out things to some of the customers.
Yeah.
So they have the information on our website, hours of operations, phone number, et cetera, and all the pricing. Especially when we had the major changes in 2019 from commercial and residential rate splitting. That's
Okay.
definitely a good point.
Okay, well, I don't feel strongly about it, and if it's convenient to have it on there, and if we're not technically changing rates when it's republished with different hours, it seems like that would be okay. I'm fascinated by the cost of disposing of smoke detectors. Do you know, is this, I'm wondering if this is a externalized cost for this product that is just not being accounted for nationwide.
Right, and
obviously no one's paying that, so they're just going in landfills, I presume.
Yeah, and so I explicitly excluded it from our HHW events because it does cost so much. I mean, these contain very small amounts of radioactive materials. You know, I don't. It's and so I'm looking at Veolia pricing, which we have a contract with for household hazardous waste. Smoke detectors, $85 per unit.
Yeah.
Because of the radioactive materials. So I'm not sure what they would actually do with those. I mean, we can accept them during household hazardous waste. I can add that back in. But during e-waste, if we get those in, I mean, you know, we have to charge what our cost to be to effectively recycle those would be.
Right. You know, I think it's fine for the purposes of our fee schedule. I'm just realizing that if, like, basically there's radioactive waste that's going into landfills because the industry has, somehow the building industry has prioritized smoke detection over having radioactive waste in landfills.
Right.
That's an interesting policy decision.
So it's
But
very
it's beyond the scope of this district.
I mean, kind of. It's de minimis. I guess we could contact, you know, Moab Umtra, see if they could help us out, or have any thoughts or ideas on that. Yeah, I mean, some of the stuff is pretty pricey.
Yeah. No, I'm fine with excluding it. Sorry. I think I'm leading us off on a tangent. I'll rein myself in. I'm going to have to think more about differentiating the residential and commercial recycling pricing, but I don't have an opinion at this time.
Yeah, you know, I think it needs to be discussed, and you know, we are still, I mean, cardboard pricing is still pretty low. We had some increases earlier this year, but the cardboard prices have certainly dwindled and gone down. And one of our primary vendors that brings us cardboard, you know, we're significantly undercharging them, and this might be a way to, you know, enhance that revenue stream, or try to get that negotiations going again, because, you know, we're charging 12 to 15 yards at $4 a yard when we're actually getting upwards of 30 yards per drop. So we're, you know, so we're losing a lot of money as it comes in. And I've built that into the workloads now, so which we don't have in this meeting, but the workloads show what we brought in, what the revenue should be, but we've added a commodity revenue adjustment that shows a bottom line. I think in the month of October, do you remember, LJ, we wrote off like $400 or something, or more than that. I can't remember exactly the amounts.
Yeah. So my comment was not about the need to price it appropriate to the cost to the district. It was more about having different residential and commercial rates for this exact same product, which I'm not sure about.
Okay.
Because $5 for a cubic yard just isn't that much. I mean, that is a lot of material.
Mm-hmm.
And relative to what it costs to dispose of that otherwise. So
you're advocating that we would consider making residential the same as commercial pricing on this particular commodity, or we would leave it as it is?
Well, if you feel like it should be raised, I'm fine with that. But I feel like I'm not sure on the rationale for making the residential pricing on the same product be 60% of what it is for the commercial.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, similarly with like Moab landfill, and then we even have a different rate for e-waste for commercial. So residential is 30 cents a pound, commercial is 50 cents a pound. That's currently ongoing for this year. But I guess the commercial is typically, it's business driven, business generated material, where residential is, obviously should be just household generated type material. So commercial provides the larger volume, but the commercial businesses are oftentimes already paying for a service to get that material picked up. Therefore, the cost of that service theoretically could cover the tip charge at the recycling center, or that cost of pickup could be modified to, cover the cost at the recycling center for tipping. And I guess the other thing, we have not included in here anything on the sponsorship program. Jessica has some updates tonight, and we can certainly discuss that. But I guess the question is, would we add that to a fee structure? And since it wouldn't be mandatory, or we've talked about it not being mandatory, then it wouldn't necessarily fit, in my opinion, to this particular fee structure. But so these are things that I need to we can certainly talk one-on-one, or there's other comments on this. I was just looking at the batteries. I mean, we bumped those up last year, and the batteries are still rather expensive. Once we have our household hazardous waste event in March of 2021, I'm going to be basically giving Veolia all of these batteries, so there's no extra transport fee, and have them segregate out the cost of those, and we can actually determine our true cost for batteries, because they have different prices for different types of batteries. NiCad, lithium ion, alkaline batteries, there's different prices for each one of those particular types of batteries. So
okay, well, I'm content with the information that you've shared, and I'll ponder it and maybe take it up with you one-on-one. Any other comments from the board on the CRC fee schedule? Great. You want to move on to Moab?
Yeah, so Moab has the most changes, and it should. It's the more complex in how we charge our fees. Some of the items I've added are just for clarification purposes. So for instance, our bulk tire rate didn't explicitly say that if the tires had rims, they have a 1.5 times the rate. But also, as I've mentioned before, is that we need to increase our cubic yard rate for tires. The cost to remove it this year, we've used multiple vendors. I'm asking for quotes for 2021, but the cost to remove it through Liberty Tire this year, it basically exceeded our revenues to get rid of these tires. And so I'm proposing a $5 per yard rate increase, but also to make sure we specify that bulk loads of tires with rims are charged 1.5 times the per unit fee. And for instance, the rate we're getting billed to get rid of the tires is based on weight. So tires with rims weigh twice as much, if not, maybe more, than a tire without a rim that comes into the landfill. So even though they're reclaiming the metals, we're still getting charged on our end the price per ton when they are removed from Moab landfill. The other thing, so we've had a couple construction companies come in. They want us to run open early or stay open later on Wednesdays. This year, Chris and I talked about this a lot. Instead of a fee per load at Klondike, it's different. It's not a whole transfer trailer. We don't have to do daily cover at Moab landfill. So our thoughts are, if we're staffing it, the gatehouse, we're open, we maybe have a machine running, we have an overtime fee of $100 per hour that we stay open outside of our regularly posted hours. And this is if like a vendor comes to us and says, we want you to open early for this or stay open later on this Wednesday. So how do we effectively bill that? So this would be different from Klondike, where Klondike is per load at $65 per truck. Yeah, and that honestly is probably underpriced, although we don't use that frequently. And then the final thing on the disposal items, this year we've received huge amounts of clean fill from projects that have brought us, thousands of yards of clean fill. As part of that material coming in, we've had to manage that material with our machines and equipment, using staff time, using equipment wear and tear, but also using diesel fuel to power the equipment. So Chris and I have also kind of worked this out as I've added their projects with large volumes of clean fill are assessed an equipment usage fee for every 120 cubic yards of clean fill. So if the trucks are bringing in 20 yards of clean fill at a time, we don't charge them, it's free. But at that 6 truck, 120 yards, they get assessed an equipment usage fee of $65. So those are currently the only changes to the disposal side. And then if we go to the next page on the greenway, so does anyone have questions on this particular?
Yeah. So what happens with load number 7 for the? So is it $65 per 120 cubic yards of clean fill, or is it 120 minimum and then the clock starts ticking? I'm wondering if you could quantify it so that you could move it rather than a footnote up into the itemized list.
I see what you're saying.
It was just ambiguous to me, and I know that sometimes ambiguous pricing then if you want it to be less ambiguous,
right. So what we did, so we had so since we brought in 1,200 cubic yards, so we would divide that by 120. Let's do it less. So say we had 1,500 cubic yards in a month from one vendor, one project. 1,500 divided by 120 is 12.5. So they would get charged 12.5 equipment usage fees. So 12.5 times 65 would be, they'd get charged $812.50.
So it might be that you say fill dirt less than 120 yards is free, and then fill dirt greater than 120 yards is X per Y unit. If it's useful to you, I'm just, when I read it, it was unclear to me, and so just trying to think through how to make that clear. And do you stockpile it for use as cover, or if like you're stockpiling all this clean fill, if another project needs clean fill, is that a product that you can sell from Moab?
That's a good question. So I mean, I'd be hesitant to sell clean fill from a landfill personally. We have not been posed that question or been asked that in the past, but we do. So if we can make use of the material as it's coming in, we have the trucks drop it where we can use it. If not, we are basically having to use the dozer and make a giant, huge mound and pile of it by working the material as it comes in. some material we're getting that has large rocks and boulders that actually can be broken down, but as part of equipment usage as well. I see what you're saying, Kaylin, and maybe I'll think about how to clarify that.
Okay.
Maybe add it as a line item perhaps too. So.
Okay.
Another question too on that fee structure on the holiday overtime hour. Is that if they come 10 minutes late, it's $100? If they come 20 minutes late, it's $100? If it's an hour and a half, is it $150? I mean, $200? Are you prorating that? What are you doing on that?
Yeah, another good question. So we're not charging people late fees. This is, and I guess maybe we need to clarify this as well further, is that if there is a large demolition project occurring and we get approached by a certain company that says, hey, we want you guys to stay open late on Wednesday. Can you do that? We talk to them and say, hey, well, we'll stay open late, but we're gonna bill you an extra $100 per hour that you're running material. Or if they want us to open up early to get a project done sooner than later, that's the same thing. So maybe I need to also clarify that language. Maybe that would be commercial only. But we're not going to get residents that are running extra. These are charge accounts with commercial vendors.
Just so there's no confusion on the commercial vendors.
Right.
Do they know if you're going to open up an hour early? I mean, 30 minutes early is still going to be $100. Or if they're going to come in with 2 loads after hours and it's going to be 45 minutes to get them unloaded, it's still going to be $100. You know what I mean?
I think 30 minutes early, that would be probably $50 instead of.
So you'd prorate it.
So we charge them. We charge them 0.5 hours at 100, so it'd be.
$50. Okay.
But I think that does need some clarification as well on this here too. So. So let me work on those and try to clean that up.
Okay. Thanks, Evan.
So there's 2 more pages for my landfill.
Yeah, great. Please continue.
So green waste recovery, and we do have composting on our minds, and we've made some huge strides towards reclaiming green waste, especially this year and last year. We've revamped the way we screen it coming in, and we've reclaimed more than 8,000 yards of material this year alone. That's now in the form of mulch that we have been selling. Now that mulch also can be used as a compost feedstock, and we're hoping to screen it next year, meaning we'll get the fine grain material out and sell just chipped wood. It'd be screened chipped wood, and then that finer grain material can also serve as a compost feedstock. So, but as composting to get started, 2 main things we need are water and a pad to build up there if we want to do an open composting. However, so the proposed changes to green waste, there's no changes in pricing. It's basically clearing up some language. Some of the stuff before was kind of a relic from the past. So, we're loading mulch for free. So why would we not load compost for free? When we have it. So I basically just kind of normalized and made that consistent for the compost. So we'll have unscreened mulch and screened mulch. We'll have unscreened compost and we'll have screened compost. So those will be the 2 separate items. No price changes per those. The district will load for no cost. And then what we've been doing this year and looking at for delivery. And we've actually done this a few times for commercial and residents, and it's worked out, and it seems to be, a good price structure thus far, but I think we need to have some sort of discretion here. So delivery of green waste recovery materials, there's a footnote. We want to make sure we have a minimum of 4 yards to deliver to qualify for delivery. There's no point in delivering 1 yard of material. It's kind of it doesn't really work out for us in my mind. It's like half a pizza or something, right? So I'm trying to think of something, but what we've identified is if the location for delivery is less than 5 miles from the Moab landfill, then we assess a $25 delivery surcharge per trip. And so right now we've been able to haul upwards of 8 to close to 9 yards of mulch in our dump trailer. And we had the Bike Skills Park, actually, they bought, I think, like close to 40 yards of mulch from us. And we charged them the per trip rate of $25 for every trip that we delivered mulch to them. And then the other one, if they're between 5 and 10 miles, then it's a $40 per trip surcharge. Greater than 10, I think we need some discretion here. It's going to be very, is it on a dirt road? How far are we to back it up? How much material do they want? I think we need to have some discretion here. And I right now I put on here call for quotes.
Okay, that looks good to me. Any questions from the board? Excellent.
And then one more page on the fee structures. And so this one's new. However, we've actually been allowing some of this to come in, and these rates are actually their equivalent rates of what the transfer station currently charges for bulky waste. So, and the reason we've done this, and if you read that first paragraph, we cannot accept furniture, mattresses, non-C&D material at Moab landfill. However, we get people up there all the time with stuff that we can't take, that we are having to turn around, redirects, that we're upsetting them. They're having to go to the transfer station, make extra trips. So we have extra trailers now. So as long as we don't get overloaded on this, and this is intended for residents only, and these rates are equivalent to the transfer station, that we can accept this material at these rates that are based on also volume, that we load into a trailer and deliver to the Klondike landfill for appropriate disposal. So it's allowing us to receive more customers, bringing more revenues to Moab landfill, and to provide supplemental services to folks that have bulky waste, mattresses that need to get rid of those. And it's kind of making more of a one-stop shop for them, but it's also bringing us more customers, more revenues, and then we're tracking. So every trailer we've brought into Klondike, we collected $110 in revenues on this trailer. We have staff driving to Klondike landfill every morning anyway, so that trip's already being made. It's not an extra cost other than hauling the trailer. But when we're disposing of the bulky waste, we're weighing in, weighing out. So based on the $110 we receive for trailer, we're actually getting an equivalent of more than $100 per ton for this material coming in. And bulky waste, the mattresses are notoriously difficult. They bounce around. You can't compact. They resurface. Anything like furniture is more difficult to handle and manage, and it takes up more space from a landfilling transportation perspective. So that's where these rates come in here. And we've talked before about, can we offer bulky waste curbside pickup? And I've not included pricing in here. I'm going to make sure the board was comfortable with this, but we could do an equivalent pricing for the delivery of green waste recovery materials. However, if someone has 10 giant pieces of furniture that we need to pick up, it's not going to be just a one rate. It's going to have to be based on the time that we spend to collect that material. But also we make sure we don't want to go in anyone's house. The questions are, what if the beds have bed bugs, or there's questionable stains on them? There's all sorts of weird stuff we could get into as part of this type of program. But we are in the solid waste industry, and this is things that we manage on a day-to-day basis at Klondike landfill anyway, that comes in at transfer trailers, where we're only making equivalent of $38 per ton. But we also can't determine where we place these materials, especially mattresses, which are very difficult to manage and handle. So long story short, equivalent pricing of transfer station. It allows us to provide supplemental services to our customers, to not turn customers around, and to provide us a degree of supplemental revenue for the organization.
Thanks, Evan. Any questions from the board? I had one.
Mhm.
Why not allow, not accept items containing refrigerant, but the district may consider picking them up?
So, yes, good question. So we don't have a contract for freon removal. So and we could look into that. So if we were to pick these up from someone's residence, we would charge them the cost for the freon removal, and we would actually deliver those items to the transfer station. So the transfer station does certified freon removal through a subcontractor, and we would just pass on those costs to the resident that we picked the materials up from.
Yep.
But we don't want to mow at landfill because it's just more. It's more work for us, and that'd be more at a loss to us, unless we look at our own subcontracted freon removal certification.
Okay. That makes sense.
Mhm.
Any other discussion about the content of the fee changes at this time? Looks like no. So this item included a formal scheduling of the public hearing on our 2021 fee schedule. I'd entertain a motion.
So, Caitlin, I guess I was anticipating that this would be captured in item D, because item C is not listed as an action item. But D did schedule the public hearing for both the fee structures and the budget.
I'm sorry. Yes. Thank you. Never mind on entertaining. So next item is review and approval of tentative. Okay. Sorry, I got thrown off. So review and approval of tentative budget for calendar year 2021 and schedule public hearing. Take it away, Evan.
Yeah, so per our bylaws, the board should be approving the tentative budget during this meeting. Then we do public notices and a public hearing, and then in the December meeting, the board should be adopting the budget for 2021. And also any fee structure changes and hours of operation. So, all right, so this, and I guess I should have thrown this in the agenda, but I threw in here tentative draft board meeting dates for 2021. These would stay at the third Thursday of every month at 4 p.m. I don't know if there's any objections to these dates, days, times. But this is something we would approve during next meeting as well.
Seeing no objections, let's move on.
Okay, I also have the district observed holidays draft on page 18 for 2021. Same number of holidays. There's no half days because Christmas and New Year's are actually observed on Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve. The only one I'm still unclear on is Columbus Day or Indigenous Peoples Day. Do we want to retain that as a holiday? And I know before it used to be included as the day after Thanksgiving was what that was swapped out for. We do need to be, so per our landfills and trash flow, we have to staff Klondike regardless the day after Thanksgiving. There's no way the transfer station could go without, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So we'll need to staff Klondike on that Friday regardless. And if we staff a facility on an observed holiday, we are obligated to pay them time and a half if they're a non-exempt employee. So and these are things we can, I put this together relatively quickly. All these things take a lot of thought and kind of just, especially the fee structures and the budget. But so this was kind of a repeat of what was this year and put together relatively quickly. I think the rest of these days do make sense. I've considered us taking the lead and declaring Election Day a holiday in the future, perhaps. But we couldn't just add another holiday to get rid of at least one of these. So
I just got a question, Evan.
mm-hmm.
What would happen on Saturday, December 25th then? Because we would be open.
Not at Klondike, but yeah, that's a good, another really good point. So yeah, these are things that, so since it's a Saturday, Christmas and New Year's, I guess we need to say, because this also equates to when we pay staff for time off for holidays. So maybe we need to distinguish between those two, or identify that this is when we're closed operationally, and then we also have separately, here's the days that our staff are eligible for holiday pay. So maybe that's, I think, where it's getting a little bit complicated, perhaps. So,
Evan, could you give them a choice holiday on days, occasions that a holiday occurs on a Saturday that they wouldn't be working anymore? Could you give them a choice holiday to use at their discretion throughout the year?
That's not a bad idea, and I think Chris is right. We'll have to be closed on Christmas Day and New Year's Day, and we can't. I mean, people aren't going to be working on those days, right? So yeah, let me think about this. Those are all things I put this together very last minute, and I guess that's a good point too, Chaz, giving the staff discretion. But I think you also need to identify what are paid holidays and what are observed holidays for the staff. This year we're paying Christmas Eve is a half day, New Year's Eve is a half day, but the paid holiday is Christmas Day and New Year's.
So those are good points, everyone. Evan, I'm wondering if you want to just take that input and then either float it with the board and other staff in advance of the next meeting, and then we can finalize it. I appreciate your bringing it to us in advance so that we can have this conversation.
Yep, I can certainly do that. Let me try to figure out how to restructure some of these.
Great.
It was easier last year.
And then I would add, it seems like having voting day be a holiday is, I like your idea of showing leadership on that. It also seems like it's nice to spread out the holidays, and so then we would have Veterans Day and Voting Day would be pretty close together. So in terms of just how staff gets observed holidays, if it's better to spread them out throughout the year.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's where Columbus Day kind of came in there, or more typically called Indigenous Peoples Day these days. But I agreed.
Okay, I don't have a strong opinion, so we can move on.
Okay, so now we get into the budgeting stuff. So the next page is the district workload forecast, and I was hoping I had some time to show comparisons between, the forecast this year versus actuals and previous years. But all of those have been taken into account with these numbers. So first of all, I started with recycling center is the first item. And on this, if there's a yellow highlight in this page, which is on page 19, that indicates where there's a rate change proposed on the previous fee structures. So the recycling center, and I did forecast in here both residential and commercial sponsorship revenues. And where last year I was optimistically conservative on these numbers, this year I've been conservatively optimistic, if that makes any sense. So I feel like I've under forecasted what the reality will likely be. And also for the budget, I've over forecasted expenditures in an attempt to make sure that we come out with a positive number at the end of 2021. And obviously some of these numbers we can't always, obviously it's not under our control, but I purposefully have somewhat under forecasted our workloads, meaning our revenues, and I've over forecasted our expenditures so that when our profit and loss is done, our revenues exceed our expenditures, and hopefully we come out with a profit for the year, other than the trends we've been seeing the past few years. So workload report was all based on the past several years of data, including this year. So these are numbers, and I just used even numbers this year the best I could. You know, I can provide more context of this if you guys want. Last year I had notes on the side. It's been incredibly busy for this time of year, and it's just been a lot going on. So I haven't had too much time, but you know, these numbers I'm confident in, and it's not just I'm just throwing numbers out there. There's a lot of analysis going into making these. So the recycling center, I've added in the sponsorships components. We're going to talk about that later today. I've added in realistic commodities for the recyclables collected and sold, including their selling prices. And then for Klondike landfill, again, our conservatively optimistic numbers. So like I mentioned, they're probably less than what we'll truly see. However, you know, biosolids is still a weird one for me. They're up and down. It's hard to make any sorts of trends with those, but I know that more people are hooking up to the wastewater plant. So, you know, one would assume that those are higher. So this year we forecasted 2,000 tons. Next year I've added 125 tons assumed. C&D I've cut down, as well as asbestos, even though those will likely be higher next year with Walnut Lane stuff resuming. A lot of those trailers have had asbestos and have had to go out to the Klondike landfill. MSW, our original projections this year was 13,900. Even with COVID, we're going to end up at about 13,000, probably a little bit more this year. And with what we lost in March, April, May, we would have easily hit 14,500 this year. So we could even see that number be higher next year than what this shows. Petroleum soils, that's close to impossible to forecast. This year we've received actually 550 tons of petroleum soils. And then the waste grease, that's based on trends. And then the other special waste handling fees, et cetera, those are based on also this year, previous years, and based on the assumptions of the special waste commodities that I forecasted in this. So last year, Klondike was forecasted to get about 715,000 in revenues. So that's cut back by, you know, a decent chunk for 2021. And then Moab is even more difficult to forecast. And even knowing that we're going to have that final school demo, which is a very large volume project, I've still kept these numbers to be as conservative as possible, but also realistic. I didn't like grossly underestimate things. I feel like these are very realistic numbers, but also a little bit on the low end. So, you know, our revenues will likely be higher than these numbers that are shown as by facility. So and I can compare, if you guys want, like I said, I did probably over forecast some of the stuff for this year. Like C&D at Klondike landfill, I way overestimated that, and I don't remember why I exactly did that. But I can jump on, like our original budget for 2020 shows our projected revenues by facility, and those we can look at for comparison purposes if the board wants me to jump in there and take a quick look at that. Let me just do that very quickly. So as we move on here, the budget that I've put together, it's built off of 2019 actuals, 2020 actuals from January through October. But I've also evaluated, you know, we've cut expenses due to COVID shortfalls. So our expenses will be probably higher next year. We can actually move forward some other items. But I've also looked at the original 2020 approved budget to compare where we're at and how to build this draft budget for 2021. So the original budget for 2020, Klondike Landfill projected $728,000 in revenues. So I've cut it back by quite a bit. And like I said, I did over forecast some items. The Recycle Center projected $113,000. So actually we're right on the same number there. But the Recycle Center had projected the Arches recycling service at $50K this year, which also didn't happen. But with us, you know, optimizing our collection, storage, sale pricing, and including the sponsorship program, I think this is a reasonable, and hopefully we get more sponsors than that. And then for contrast, Moab landfill last year was forecasted at about $385,000. So I've also toned that down to a number of about 60,000 plus on that. So these things take time to dial into. These forecasts are difficult. Our historic numbers, there was a lot of double entries and inflated numbers. It looked like we brought in more than we actually did. So as we clean up our internal administrative, you know, type procedures and accounting and QuickBooks tracking, we can really dial in on these numbers and make sure we have accurate data to forecast, and obviously for reporting purposes too. I'm not saying they were way off, but like there were just weird little things that were added in there. And you know, with a new tracking system, we're comparing, you know, apples to apples, and we're tracking things by multiple ways of kind of checking ourselves to make sure that what's in our accounting software matches everything else that we've brought in. And this year to date, we're spot on. Everything's very, very accurate. And every month we look at those items to do that. So any questions on the workloads?
Thanks, Evan. I appreciate all your work going into this, and I imagine that it's hard to look into the crystal ball and make a projection, but it's necessary, and so I really appreciate your getting this to us.
Yeah, and the more that we, you know, collect and store accurate data, the easier this will be to track. So I think those are very reasonable, you know, educated, you know, estimates that through an analysis type procedure that we will likely exceed in 2021, which benefits us in our budget. So moving on to page 20 is where the budget kicks in. So the top of that page, I basically, all those workload forecasts I've built in to the recycling center, to Moab landfill, to Klondike landfill. So that's where those numbers came from, as well as the sponsorship revenues for the CRC. And this shows the gray highlighted gross profit shows our total revenues by facility, and those numbers match the previous workload estimates. So, and I don't know how much detail you guys want me to go into on this. Last year I did provide some notes, and maybe I can do that as part of the next meeting. But these are also, we've updated our depreciation schedules. Those are based on our current assets and, you know, acquisition of the BOMAG compactor, the motor grader, which we started to depreciate at Klondike. And our depreciation schedules our values for depreciation have increased. I mean, the BOMAG was a $600,000 machine. We're depreciating that over a 15-year period, but that's a good chunk of money that we have to depreciate over time. Chris and I have been discussing and looking at our historic depreciation spreadsheet that shows that we're depreciating items that are, you know, mostly utilized or that we're not sure. So, you know, this year, it looks like we're not going to sell the assets that we plan to sell this year, and I've built them into next year's budget. hopefully our budget gets, is good. And next month I also need to have an amended budget that we need to pass as well. Although we're not going to exceed our expenditures. And I guess, this is for another discussion, but I mean, if we don't exceed our expenditures, do we actually need to amend our budget? That's the other question. Is it worth doing that exercise? We've been reviewing it all year long. I guess I can present an amended budget and the board can decide whether or not we approve that next month. I think it's worth doing, and we've been evaluating that and doing the exercise as well. But what Chris and I were talking about is, so if this year, we know we've gotten hit, we lost a lot of TRT from the county, our mineral lease revenues are still way down, our revenue, our enterprise fund revenues are down from earlier in the year. Fourth quarter is looking pretty good actually right now. But do we want to write off this year some depreciation that is no longer has value to us that we're going to keep expending for the next 5 to 10 years? So do we take a hit now and write off that depreciation at the end of 2020, and that would clean up our depreciation? That means we would depreciate less in 2021 and in out years as well. So that's the concept there. Any thoughts or questions on that idea? I can propose more next, but I don't know if the board had any thoughts on that now. I don't want you guys right now. And
Yeah, I mean, it sounds reasonable in theory, and seeing a specific proposal might help us.
Right. Okay. So moving on, expenses 7,400 are subscriptions, travel, training. We cut a lot of training this year. We'd really like to get some more of our staff MOLO trained. We need to do more safety training that's not just internet-based type stuff, hopefully. And then our subscriptions and memberships, those are Utah Association of Special Districts. There's a variety of Employers Council. Those all get billed towards those items. These are decreases from the 2020 budget, but I think those are reasonable numbers. And I looked at what we spent year to date, and what I can see us spending in future years, and I have all those readily available if the board wants me to discuss, or I could send those out. I wish I had more time to do a direct comparison of some of these numbers. Insurance just came in. Those are real numbers for next year, with the exception of property insurance. I inflated because we are proposing some additional rentals, and those columns are highlighted because I need to go back in here and look at percentages to spread across each class. So instead of billing insurance just to admin class, we would spread it through each facility: Klondike, Moab, CRC. Shop has some property and so forth. But even the workers' comp, automobile, those could be split up amongst each facility. Utilities, again, and so I've overinflated some of these expenses to provide buffers, and it's unlikely that we would exceed these, and there could be some oddball things, but utilities are based on trends, and they're also inflated to make sure that we have enough to cover those expenses. Professional services, if we need to do waste characterization, I put about $500 in there for Klondike. Waste disposal, that $12,500 is under Klondike for household hazardous waste. So that would be, household hazardous waste is diverting waste from Klondike. So that's a little bit higher than last year's estimate for the HHW events that we have scheduled for March. And then the $5,500 in that line is for the recycling center. So that's for all the e-waste, the batteries, the bulbs, the antifreeze, and so forth that we collect. That's for those particular reclamation, disposal, disposition items. And then the $2,000 is for the shop. That's for our used oil. Actually, that's used oil. The shop is used oil and antifreeze, which I should probably include in the recycle center, but we have waste antifreeze ourselves. Recycle center is our battery, bulbs, e-waste, and other ancillary universal waste. Moving down, survey. This is probably more than it will cost. In speaking with Red Desert, I need to present the surveys to the board. They did a great job. Really good basis for us to advance things at these landfills. This would be an annual drone survey that would take photographs that would be used to identify changes in topography, which would be a tool that we could identify what's our airspace utilization, how much airspace have we used between the time frames of those surveys, and to look at our down to our cost of airspace at these facilities, perhaps. So we can look back and say, okay, we brought in 17,000 tons at Klondike and we used 25,000 cubic yards. How does that equate? What's our compaction density? What's our airspace utilization? Are we expending too much fill material, cover material, all those types of things? That could be relatively cheap. Legal, I built in a good chunk there, 10,000 total for the year. And I'm not sure what it's going to cost us, but the more we talk about, a waste ordinance outside of Moab city limits, the more we talk about, possibly putting out an RFP and a contract for something like that, that would require some extensive legal review and consultation. So I built in about 10 grand for that. And then the next line item down, I was really trying to beef this number up. And I guess bottom line of our budget is that, it's kind of concerning to me because it makes me question, do we need to raise our tipping fees? And I'll get to that as we get further in this, but so the 5 grand is for a composting consultant. I think that should cover our cost to understand someone how to initiate a composting program. The 15 grand I'd really like to enhance. We need to get an RFP out there, and we need to start getting engineering design for a 4th cell at Klondike landfill. And we're not close to filling up cell 3 or cell 2. Cell 2 is getting closer. Cell 3 has a lot of airspace, but in landfilling, we should be excavating another cell that we use as cover material as we fill the existing cells at Klondike landfill. So right now, and Chris can speak to this, and he talks to me all the time, and he kind of stresses me out a little bit. But we're cutting into our borrow material where it's close to going below grade of our drainage features. So those are all engineered drainage features that we can't go below. Otherwise, we're gonna get ponding. It won't be meeting our permit obligations. But if we get another cell design, start excavating, using that for cover material, getting that approved by the state first, that's the direction we need to go with Klondike right now, among some other items. IT, I cut back. We had 10 grand this year. I think our costs will be less next year, and we won't be buying as many information technology related items, but we do have a lot of just ongoing routine bills, Adobe. I mean, there's a lot of things that kick in there. And audit / financial consulting, that's based on our 2020 third-party audit rates plus the supplemental costs, but also utilizing VeloChase. But I think as LJ has picked up more and is learning more from Nick, that'll probably come in less next year. That's kind of an overinflated number, and also less than this year's budget, I believe. This year we had about 22 grand for that particular item. But the composting consultant, which happens here, I broke that into a new subcategory, which is engineer / specialized consulting. So the audit financial consulting are those two particular components. And then I'm hoping that our R&M, I mean, this is reasonable. It doesn't assume like a giant blowout of a machine perhaps, but it does provide some contingency in those, the RM components. Again, I looked at this year's expenses, our budget. I looked at 2019 expenses, and then talking with Chris as to some of the work that needs to be done. We need to decide when to depreciate a costly improvement or maintenance or repair, and when to just expense it. So those are things that we need to look at as well. R&M 2020 original budget was 65,000 roughly. You know, we've spent much less than that year to date. Through October, we had only spent, where's equipment R&M? We'd only spent about 22,000 year to date from January through October. So, but these need to have a buffer, and you know, I know for a while, and hopefully the board hasn't forgotten, but we still, you know, are faced with an aging fleet of equipment that hasn't been properly maintained, and it's well used and exceeding hours where you know it needs some work. But again, I feel like these are reasonable numbers. Same with, you know, moving down to the second page of the proposed tentative budget. Page 21 is our petroleum, oil, and lubricants, diesel exhaust fluid, fuel, which is a huge expense for our landfills. Again, these are probably a little bit higher than we'll end up at the end of the year, but I want to have those buffers in there. Moving down to freight, again, the same type of exercise, looking at year to date, original budget year to date, and 2019 and 2018, what are those reasonable expenses, but also waste tires, which has become a very expensive item, and even prices are going to be higher next year. Liberty Tire removed tires this year at $168 a ton. They gave us a quote for next year. It's already at $200 a ton. So that's, you know, and we didn't even cover our expenses by the revenues for those tires. So that's why we need to bump our rates up. And I did probably evaluate that a little further. Am I going into too much detail? Am I boring the board?
Well, I think you don't need to repeat qualifiers about how your methodology when it's the same.
Okay.
And, you know, because you haven't given us a side-by-side comparison of 2020 projected and 2021 proposed, I'm not seeing, like, I didn't open up 2020 and I'm
Right.
like going back and forth to see the changes. So I would say if there's areas where you've deviated, where there's significant changes, but a lot of this, yeah, in the absence of that comparison, I kind of rely on that comparison to know where there's significant things for me to look at. And otherwise, I just throw out there that if it's less than 5 figures, I tend to skip over it. My own, because there's a lot of rows here, and a few columns, and I need to high grade my analysis a little bit. So yeah.
So that's good. That's good input. So the next big item are rentals.
Kevin?
Oh, I was going to say also, Evan, I appreciate your detail. It's commendable. We need to know this information. It's just a lot of information in one basket. But thank you so much. And also one more comment. The direction you're going with overestimating and underestimating is exactly where you want to be. So thank you very much for putting that into your calculations. Thank you.
Yes, no, thanks. Yeah, I've been, you know, it's been, you know, since I've been here, it's been tough to forecast, and there's been a lot of just oddball events. You know, especially this year has just been a huge wild card. So rentals, we built in a lot of rentals here, and you know, these are still, and I need to get into like kind of the concept of this below. But so Klondike landfill, Chris and I, in discussing in operations, we need to get a backup. We need a dozer out there. We had a rental there this year. We had to actually send that back because of budget cuts. But it's really impacting our quality of our working face, the way it's to keep the slopes clean, and to mitigate wind-blown litter. That's also a factor of multiple things: wind, water, etc. Moab landfill, we are proposing a rented excavator again, as well as a rented loader, and those a portion of this rental cost would be actually placed into this construction in progress bucket that would be future depreciation for the Moab landfill excavation that we need to continue to move forward and complete as soon as possible. And hopefully with tours here soon, we can actually look at those as well. Shipping, grinding, our cost this year for mulching was about $28,000. We should have less volume next year. That supplemental money can hopefully be used for a trommel screen to screen out the material and sell a higher quality mulch that's screened, and establish maybe a smaller scale pilot compost program up there to kind of kick that back into gear as well. So that's, hopefully that money can suffice for that. And I think we'll keep tracking all this stuff and seeing how it goes. And I can put a comparison together relatively easily on that far right column and send this back out. But I do have a couple of things to dial in on this as well. And that's why, up above that engineer specialized consulting, I had that highlighted orange because I'd really like to bump those numbers up. But I need to find more money, and I can't propose a negative budget. So payroll has been forecasted, basically to a T, and how I've split it up. I kind of showed the board an exercise last year. I guess, and last year we also did a closed session to kind of review proposed wages and wage increases and so forth. I didn't add this to this agenda. If the board wants to do a budget workshop or to schedule a supplemental special meeting, we can discuss these things. But basically, everyone, I'm trying to get people to where I feel that their experience, their skill sets, and their level of expertise from an operational standpoint is normalized across the organization. So basically everyone's getting between, I think it's like around 2% increase to, I think, a max of like 3% next year with a couple minor outliers. So no drastic wage increases. But I've forecasted all these out. I've got the new Grant County benefits rates, which are higher this year in 2021, and I split them up by class and where they would likely be working throughout the year. So that includes payroll taxes, payroll benefits, and the payroll wages. So I'm going to move down to the other income / expense codes. So that hard blue line shows our net ordinary income. So this is solely based on enterprise fund revenues minus operational expenses. That's not the line you want to look at, though. So the other income shows, okay, so it looks like we're not, we've listed the equipment the board approved for excess. We've listed the Ford Edge. We've got a couple inquiries, but nothing serious. So it's likely we'll sell these machines next year and hopefully for more than these values. Chris mentioned the Clark loader, like an old dinosaur loader, we could probably sell. The old dozer at Klondike, it's like an Army grade 1985 D7. We can hopefully get that repaired and sell that, make some money. But also we need to reinvest into these machines to replace them. And that's the direction we're trying to take this at. But by selling these items, that gives us revenues. The admin is the Ford Edge and that Dodge truck. The Moab landfills, or Klondike is the 950 loader, which will likely get much more than 30 grand out of. And then CRC is the JCB forklift. However, we've come across a couple issues. That's part of our later items here is the 950 got a flat tire. We want to put an old tire from the scraper on the 950 and sell it. And the JCB has experienced more mechanical difficulties than expected. So those still evaluating that machine and potential to sell it. PTIF interest revenue, it's been way down this year. Last year was forecasted quite a bit more, and we've actually received extremely less money this year. And so I feel like that's, it's a kind of in the middle number. TRT, Grand County, graciously and thankfully has dedicated $300,000 to us for TRT. So that's been built in there, as well as the mineral lease forecast that Grand County allocated to us as well. So Grand County allocated $300K plus the $86K for the mineral lease. And so here's where it gets a little complicated. So I forecasted all the expenses that are going to be moved towards this Moab landfill excavation. And then so down below on the bottom of this page are basically, relatively reasonable estimates as to what percentage would be moved towards this excavation fund that would be depreciated once we were ready to landfill in that area. So by doing that, we're taking up, some freight away, a good portion of the rentals, a good portion of the fuel, and the employee benefits and costs. And then that line item that says other expense, move expenses to CIP MLF excavation, I'm subtracting that, which is adding money back into our profit and loss, because those funds need to be depreciated. This excavation is going to buy us at least 20 years, if not 30 years of life at this landfill, which will receive, I've done the math, about $9 million plus in revenues by extending the time frame of that facility. And so this is where the budget gets, a little concerning. It's like, okay, so we were that overspent because our bottom line is we're showing a profit of $7.76. But at the same time, Moab landfill is still showing to be operating at a loss next year, which has, got me thinking, okay, are our tip fees correct? Is it the mulching, the tires, is all these things, Moab landfill is more of like a waste diversion facility to a degree anymore than just a landfilling operation. So that's where some of the stuff comes into play. I think just to remind the board is that we operate 3 separate geographically isolated facilities that are low volume. So our cost to operate these operations are higher than if we had larger volumes. So I don't think we need to raise Moab landfill prices. I think once we can get these projects underway and normalize things, eventually we're going to have, I know we've had really good retention rates with staff. At some point someone's going to leave the organization, and I'm not saying that they need to, but for next year we need the staff. Once these major projects are done, we could operate with fewer staff. So my intent next year, if we were to lose a staff member, would probably be to not replace that position. And we've also talked about how if we lost recycling center staff, that we would likely replace them with part-time staff that would reduce their costs for benefits, URS benefits, health insurance benefits, all those types of things, and it would also save us money for the organization. And then the other final items on here are so all these leases, the Zion compactor, the motor grader. We put the cost of the machine into a bucket that we depreciate, but the interest that we pay on the machines is expensed on an annual profit and loss statement. So the motor grader is currently estimated, and that's a reasonable amount. It's gonna be right around $5,000. But overall, our interest expense for those 3 things, including the Klondike bond, is about $15,000 for 2021. So hopefully that's a good explanation of how this was derived and where we're at with the budget currently. And then the other item, and I think by the board adopting the budget wouldn't mean that they adopt this, but I have in here potential capital investments in 2021. It's at the bottom right of page 21 of the board packet. That would be for future depreciation. Obviously we need a new admin office. I put in a legal, $150K. We've got the money in our PTIF, but do we do that? Do we pull the plug? When? And if so, that'll have to be depreciated. And the other things we talked about, the ADA ramp, the CRC loading ramp, forklifts, etc. And then there's other items Chris recently brought to my attention, that the dozer at Moab landfill is going to need track replacements probably next year. That's going to cost between $20,000 to $30,000. That's, that's a major preventive measure, but also a repair of a machine that's going to last us for a long time. The question is, do we depreciate that or do we expense it? And then later in our board packet today is an option for getting new tires and wheels for the 962 loader and the 613 scraper. And the question is, would we expense that, which would reflect on the profit and loss, or would we depreciate that over a 5 to 7 year period and add to our depreciation schedule that would show as a different type of expense? So that's all I have. The recommended motions did provide a kind of a synopsis of, what are our revenues from what, and then what are our expenditures from what and what. And I guess I could show comparison between 2020 and 2021 and a future information that presents to the board. So, but I think, if the board were to tentatively approve this budget, you would approve the tentative budget this month and then adopt the budget during the public hearing next month. I know that was a lot. Any questions? I'd be happy to, have one-on-ones and discuss some of the stuff with board members, or I need to still dial in on this a little bit further and see where we're at and everything. So,
Well, I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion to approve. Let's make a motion to approve the tentative budget for calendar year 2021 and schedule a public hearing for Thursday, December 17, 2020 at 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, where we can finalize the budget for 2021.
Thank you, Kevin. Do you want to include, so we can do the public hearing for the fee schedule separately, I guess, unless you want to include that in your motion.
I will include it as a fee schedule to approve the fee schedule on that. I'll include that at the same time.
Great. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Chad. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. Kevin.
You bet.
Diane. And you're muted.
Yes.
Chad.
Yes.
Kaylin, yes. Motion passes unanimously. 4-0. Next up, research summary of recycling membership and sponsorship programs in the United States.
I'm gonna have Jessica lead this. This starts on page 22. She did a kind of some research and comparison. But I want to make sure that we point out that these are not necessarily recycling facilities. Some of them are, but some of them are actually like recycling associations. So they're not direct. They're all unique in their own way and so forth. So take it away, Jessica. You're muted.
Okay, like Evan said, a couple of these are applicable to us, but a majority of them are not. I tried to get locations from all over the US because they all generate different types of waste. I couldn't find any particulars, with the exception of Sedona, that really fit into the tourist town generations. But I don't know if you guys did a look at it, but Sedona Recycles, which is option A, and Clean Valley Recycling, letter C, are the ones that are the most applicable to us. They're very basic systems that I think we could easily integrate, but I think we would need a little bit more detail on our end. I've been generating a draft plan along with a system of online membership and payment that would streamline the entire process for us. I'm not going to reread all of these to you guys directly. This is something that you can kind of pick and choose. Some of them are very extensive programs, specifically the Washington State Recycling Association, because they hold their own conferences. They're very large. They cover the entire state, and they're generated with people of the solid waste district, higher education, legislative folks. So, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. A lot of them are nonprofits. They're not mandatory. They're all volunteer based. So it's something that is easily translatable to us, but we just need to be able to fine tune it to fit us specifically. But did anybody read it and have any questions?
I read it. Thanks for putting that together. I don't have any questions at this time.
Okay.
Anyone else? Looks like not.
Okay.
So thanks so much. That was interesting to see.
Yeah, thanks for the research. I think we should adopt the one in Texas where it's $10,000 to join the.
Yeah, they had a lot of perks that would take an entire team to really put together. So no, thank you. I don't have that much time on my plate.
All right, let's move on to continued discussion on the solid waste district's role in the development of a trash collection policy outside of Moab city limits.
So I think this can be brief. I don't think there's much that needs to be said, but I know last board meeting, there was, I think, it wasn't a vote, but it was like a tacit agreement that the county should take the lead on this. I've since talked with Chris Baird, Christina Sloan, and we had a short discussion with Mary and Kaylin as well. And the county stance is that, hey, we as the county create a special district to deal with solid waste. Why would we take the lead on a trash collection policy outside of the city when we have a solid waste district that is we've given the authority to do so? So now we're reevaluating that this organization and this board would be subject to some probably volatile discussions and contentious decisions to make in the future. That's all I've got to say. Do you have anything, Kaylin?
Yeah, I'll just add that Chris Baird's position was that the county doesn't currently collect fees for this sort of thing, like broad-based from most of their properties. So they're just not set up for it, and as well as not having the expertise. So they don't see any reason why they would be better qualified than the district. And the district is mandated, as Evan said, with managing all things solid waste. I guess the one thing that I would ask you, Evan, is I'd be curious if another community has implemented this sort of thing. If they could provide input on like how much it costs them, either in both. And that could be a combination of external professionals, consultants, as well as internal staff time. Just
right.
And I don't know if anyone has, but it might allow us to dial in on what we're biting off.
Yeah, and I think the other thing to mention is that the county sounded like they'd be more than willing to support this in a couple of ways: GIS mapping support, possibly some legal, but also a resolution that says we support this, the district doing this. But also, I've been meaning to contact Orion Rogers, who has discussed this concept, and I think the health department also support this and support our move towards this type of policy. So, but I can do some more research on that and see what other districts may have, been involved with this in the past, and how to best approach this. So.
And so the question, I think, for the board is that a lot of what we do, the public doesn't pay attention to. I think the public might pay attention to this, and so it may involve more controversy, which can be unpleasant. And just want to make sure that you're up for that.
Oh, Kevin already applied for his membership. We got to actually.
Yeah. And silence is acquiescence.
That's right. I better speak up now, huh?
All right. Well, hearing nothing, we'll look forward to hearing back from you, Evan, with more information.
Okay.
New business. Review and discussion of draft joint resolution with the City of Moab.
Yeah, so this has also been an ongoing task that I've been working on. So we all know the county adopted the resolution earlier this year. I pitched it to the city. The city has come back and they wanted a different type of structured resolution. I've been working with Joel, and then lately I've been working with Lori Simonson, the city attorney, to craft this resolution. And it begins, and this is a draft, begins on page 25. Not everything is settled, and there's been a lot of additions and edits. I originally drafted it very briefly. I excluded a lot of history. The more I thought about this, and the city had a discussion at one of their meetings, a very brief discussion at one of their board meetings or council meetings, and I felt that it was important to add the history back into the resolution. So this would be, at this point, it would be a joint resolution. The city would adopt it in one of their public meetings, and then we would, as the Solid Waste District, the board would also adopt this. So it's got, as much history as the past county one had in it, but it also added the concept of the previous city contracts that had a provision for the waste to stay local, and then it went away in 2019. So in talking with Lori Simonson on this, I'm still waiting on some final comments from her. There's still some things that we're a little bit hung up on. But basically, so we would be agreeing that we would not increase our municipal solid waste tipping fees at Klondike no more than 10% of the rate when this resolution is passed. So, I mean, the fee structures that I'm not proposing any rates increases right now. I've certainly thought about it, but is this the right year and time to do it? I don't think it is. So, but we would be agreeing to not raise tipping fees 10% of current rates just for MSW within a 2-year period, contingent upon the establishment of a mandatory solid waste collection ordinance or policy outside of city limits. And the geographic area is something we're also still working on and trying to solidify. So that's become, I don't see that as that, the city is having that kind of a, they're trying to define an area in my mind that we may or may not be able to succeed on getting that area included. So I've proposed some new language. I'm trying to clarify. I think ideally we would want to include this policy north of Highway 128 and probably extending up to the 313 corridor where that developments are being planned up there, possibly up to as far north as the airport. But that's part, another contingent thing is here as well. So, and then item number 3 on the therefores. So the city, if we agree to this, the city's going to, and per the city's contract for the waste hauling, they have to have both parties agree. They can't mandate, they can only request a modification to this current contract. So I think we've worked through that language. So it's unfortunate that even though we're going to do all this, the city can only request, and if the city doesn't, if the current contractor doesn't agree to that, the city theoretically can't do anything about it because they're bound to their contract. So, but there are certain events that puts the contract up for review that the contractor can actually come to the city. One of them being if tipping fees are increased by more than 5%. So it could force an amendment that may or may not. I'm not sure. So these are, important details that we're trying to work out. Item 4 is something that I'm hung up on. The city attorney is hesitant to use the word include here and is proposing to use the word request. And this is where we're at now because I think this requirement got excluded in 2019, and I don't see why the city would not agree to include a provision in all future solid waste contracts that requires solid waste to be transferred or disposal at one of our local landfills. To only request it, to me, is not serving the purpose of this document, nor is it effectively resolving what we're trying to resolve at this time with respect to the current city contract. But as we talked about the last agenda item, with an outside city limit requirement, and if we did that, we would likely we would manage a contract, and we would build this stuff into these contracts perhaps as well too. So maybe it's a moot point, maybe it's not, but I think it's important to say, the city is going to include these provisions in the future. So I wanted to get this to the board, and hopefully the board's had a chance to read this, because we're close between Lori and myself. We're pretty close on this in our agreement, and then from there, Lori would bring it to Joel, the city manager, to evaluate, and subsequently would go to the city council, where the city of Moab would adopt this, and then it would come back to the district for us to adopt it, the board to adopt this resolution. So I want to make sure that if the city goes forward with this and adopts this, we need to make sure that the Solid Waste District Board is willing and ready to adopt this resolution, and then we don't have to go back to the drawing board if one party doesn't, one group or board or council doesn't agree to this.
All right. Well, Evan, thank you for your work on that. Board members, what are your thoughts?
I know that
Okay. Go ahead, Diane.
I was just saying that I know I haven't had time to read it close enough, so I need to read it some more. But I certainly would agree with Evan in that number 4 that he mentioned about include versus request.
Thanks. Kevin?
Yeah, I just was going to say that, Evan, I trust you that you'll cover the board in this, as far as making sure that all the things, you know how we feel about making sure the solid waste goes into our landfills in the area. So I trust that you'll cover ourselves in the board here. So keep up the good work. Thanks for all you put into it.
And I'm doing my best, but this is also to a degree a kind of a compromise. So, that's why I'm hoping for, yeah.
Yeah. Chad, do you have any thoughts? It's fine if you don't.
I have permission to not have a thought. No, I don't have anything more to add. I'm with Diane. I think we need to include on number 4, not request. That's kind of the whole point.
Okay. And Evan, I'd just like to throw in there that defining the required geographic area as small as possible, I think is beneficial for the district. It doesn't mean that it limits where the district establishes. I think the district in its efforts can make it broader, but for the purposes of this contract, having it smaller just lowers the bar for what has to be achieved. So I wouldn't get too hung up on that. More what I noticed with the language is that it seems like it's hard to have a plain language definition of a geographic boundary, because as it's written, like Mill Creek isn't great because it actually cuts down to the river south of 128, and it seems like we want, and there may be properties just to the, well, they're probably in San Juan County. Yeah, it's messy. So hopefully you don't have to have a surveyor write the description, a meets and bounds description of the boundary, but I don't think we're there yet. I'd agree that on 4, ideally it would include a provision, but from wearing my city hat, I'd be reluctant to say all future, because that's for forever. And I don't know if there can be some time limit, if that would make it more palatable. But I'll let you continue to work on that. I did have another issue with number 4, and that is that as it's written, it's all future solid waste collection and hauling. And the solid waste is not clearly defined. Both MSW and more broadly solid waste are referred to in this agreement. And currently, and my understanding is that this has to do with MSW delivered to Klondike, but as number 4 is written, it could be interpreted to also mean recycling contracts. And so if this were to be interpreted to require that recycling collected in the city be delivered to CRC, then I think that could be opening up a can of worms. So I would rather see paragraph 4 tightened up. That it's MSW being delivered to Klondike. And I mentioned this to Lori. I don't have wording to suggest, and I'm not even sure what the intent is, but just want to point that out, that it might be interpreted in the future by either us, if we are unclear now, or future interpreters. There could be an ambiguity. So, but overall, I think it's a good document that you're getting close on, and I'm sorry that the provision was omitted from the current franchise agreement, and it's taking so much time.
Well, no, I don't blame you or the city. I think it was just overlooked, perhaps, and but this is a very important thing to work out. There's no question in my mind on that. So yeah, that's a good point on item 4, solid waste versus MSW, and that's not my intent on how I wrote it, but I think that would be a good goal, is to get the recycling to the CRC and make a mini MRF and be able to handle everything. That'd be pretty awesome. But so yeah, let me look at that. That's a good yeah, those good attention to detail. I'll take a look at that. And
I know lack of clarity on that topic was also a sticking point in the city franchise agreement. So, but yeah.
And that's why I said, like, item number 1. So I consider a solid waste management facility to include the recycling center, but I specified that there was a solid waste landfill facility. So maybe we can use that terminology in 4, that all, solid waste discarded for disposal is delivered to a solid waste landfill facility. I did use management facility again there. So that's solid waste management facility is a very explicitly defined in the Utah code. So that's, yeah, those are things I can look at in more detail, and there's been quite a few changes.
Great, thanks. Okay, let's move on to H. Approving the purchase and installation of new tires for the Caterpillar 613 scraper and the Caterpillar 962 loader at the Klondike landfill. Possible action item.
So I'm gonna let Chris take the lead on this, but I'm gonna provide a little bit of introduction. So the pictures you see on page 30, you know, the tires on the scraper have been in horrible shape since before. You know, I think we've got the maximum life out of these, but this year, you know, I've been, you know, extremely financially conservative and trying to minimize the, you know, what we, you know, spend money on, and we've really been trying to track the budget and make it so we come out the best that we can this year. But I think whether or not it's this year or next year, we need to make these investments, and they need to happen sooner or later. So what's good is that the 950 loader that we are going to sell, it uses the same size tires as the scraper. The two front tires are in better shape, and they're the same size that can be retrofitted to the 950, and then we could sell it. But then we're also proposing something else, is that the 962 loader, which is a new loader that we've used, and there's pictures in here, for some reason it was, and this was before Chris and my time, it was purchased with solid tires, and we've known that it's extremely rough to the staff that operate it, but it's also extremely rough on the machine. And so we're proposing to actually buy 8 new tires. We want to put 4 new ones on the scraper, 4 new tires and wheels on the 962, and take 2 of the tires, used tires from the scraper, put them on the 950, and then be able to sell that machine. Sorry, I may have spoken more than I planned to, Chris, but I'm gonna let you take it from there. And you're muted.
Yeah, and the other thing to bring up is if you look at those pictures, those markings were made before, so somebody's identified that this was an issue, like Evan said, before we'd even started. But that being said, I've actually grounded this piece of equipment because it's unsafe to drive with a full load. This thing can tip over. So this machine is now it's not being operated. So and it's a wear item. It's not something that's been overlooked. It's not something that we could have prevented. It's just it's been used and it needs to be replaced. The 962, which is our wheel loader, if you look at that, those aren't even solid tires. I've actually looked into the benefits of solid tires. Those tires are actually transfer station tires, and it's more than it's just a rough ride for the operator or the piece of equipment itself. I mean, it's almost unsafe. I actually ran it on Wednesday, and I was only able to run it about a half a day till I had to get out of the machine. So I'm on the verge of grounding that machine as well. So we're talking about just wear items that need to be replaced. I don't know if you guys have any other questions. To me, it's just an obvious thing. I mean, there's a difference between machines being broken and not being taken care of, and just wear items wearing out that needs to be replaced.
So I would just point out a few more things, Chris, and thanks for the supplemental information. So yeah, I mean, so meaning a transfer station means you're operating this on a flat ground that's a concrete floor, not a landfill with bumpy terrain. And I mean, it's literally just like beating the hell out of the staff that are operating this thing, and it's going to destroy the machine. So it wasn't the best investment when it was purchased. The benefit here, and so we're waiting on a few more quotes, but the benefit by combining these jobs into one saves us a lot of money. So to just do the scraper would be 20 grand. You know, to just do the 962 would be, you know, probably 20 grand. And, you know, we've got a quote for doing all of these jobs at less than 30 grand. And I've also asked Chris to identify what is the time frame, what would be the lifetime of these tires from when we put them on. So is it 5 years, 7 years, 10 years? And then secondly, that helps decide, do we depreciate this expense, meaning not show it as an expense in our profit and loss? And then how long do we depreciate that for? So, and the scraper, just to point out also that on page 31 of the board packet, it didn't used to look that bad, but you've got cords exposed. And, you know, if that tire blew when you're carrying, how many yards of dirt, 4 to 6 yards or whatever, I mean, the machine could tip over. We could be looking at a fatality at the landfill. So, so it's extremely dangerous to operate, and that machine has not been operated for several months now since we identified that particular close-up picture of that tire. So
thank you for that. I suspect the board feels similarly, that we trust you to make these sorts of decisions about needed maintenance, especially for safety. My primary concern is just like, did you budget for it, and are you following procurement policy? But as far as getting down into these sorts of granular decisions, I mean, you're going to have my support, and I suspect the rest of the boards. And so what I noticed is that you presented us with one quote. I don't recall offhand what the spending limits are for different types of procurement procedures, but it sounds like you're getting multiple quotes. And so the reason we're hearing it tonight is because you want to get this going. And so we're going to do a not to exceed. And if you get something cheaper, then you can go with that. Is that correct?
yes, exactly. So our procurement policy states that if it's an expense over $5,000, we get a minimum of three bids. And if there's not 3 bids, we can write a exclusion as to why there are 3 bids weren't available. So we're waiting for 2 more bids. And once we get those, we'll be evaluating this. It's not just the cost, but is it the same quality of tire as well? So we need to look at, there's different types of tires we can get. This is actually a very reasonable price. There were just some omissions in the quote. That's why there's some handwriting on there. But then the second question, this was not budgeted. And, we are obviously tight on finances this year. We have the money, but does this make our budget look better? No, it certainly doesn't. But is it a necessary expenditure? In my opinion, yes. And we've held on this for a while now. The more Chris and I have talked about this, we have limited use of machines at the landfill, and we can be doing so much more work and getting so much more progress done. So now we're having to haul dirt with just that loader with those solid tires, and the scraper is another major tool to move materials. So, so I guess the question is, would we want to depreciate this? I'm leaning towards yes, but I think also we need to at some point stop adding to our depreciation, just expense some of these things, and just cut our losses when we need to. That's why I proposed the drastic PTIF increase in funding last board meetings. We need to really expand our funding for PTIF stuff and have funds for these routine maintenance and repairs. So so we're going to follow our procurement policy. I've already talked with Chris about that. We need to get bids. It's actually something that's in the dollar field of above $10,000. We need to make sure we're absolutely adhering to that and getting effective number of quotes. Unless it's a state contract and we can go right to the state contract, that's actually a way we can get around that too. So,
yes.
And just a quick thought, Evan, too, on wear items. We might not want to depreciate wear items because it's something that just needs to be figured out more like a maintenance thing, even though this is a high dollar. And I mean, it's an expensive wear item. It's stuff that we just have to, we kind of just need to figure in. All the tires are going to wear out just like the D8 and tracks. So just something for consideration I just thought about.
Yeah, I mean, we bought tires for one of the loaders last year. It was way less expensive. They're smaller tires. We just expense them. Either way, we need to be consistent at some point. But I mean, this is an investment that's going to last hopefully at least 5 to 7 to upwards of 10 years on these tires. But probably not 10. But so if you think these are going to last 5 to 7 years, then it does make sense to depreciate. But that's something we can figure that out internally and bring that to the board as well too. So.
Okay. Any more questions or a motion from the board?
Evan, you say that it costs less to do this whole thing all at once. It looks like you're going to mount those 2 other tires, the 2 excess tires on the other loader with the 10 remounts. Is that correct? The dismount and mount at 10 tires?
Yes.
Or I should ask Chris that probably.
Yeah, so it's because the two machines are four mounts, dismounts, and then we would take the two used tires and put a mount and dismount. That's how on the loader that has a flat tire, which is a
Yeah.
third. Yep.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to make sure we got those other two tires put on the other loader. So that's
Yeah.
good.
Yep. And that was the delay in some of the bids too, is as I started to evaluate these tires, it was to get these people to come out and do this. Obviously it's cheaper if you can do it in one. And it was like trying to put everything together. So that was kind of the delay in getting the three bids, as well as trying to have the other companies rebid the job as a whole job.
Right. Sounds good. That's the way to do it. Good job.
So I'd like to make a motion.
Please.
I make a motion that we authorize the purchase and installation of tires for the 613 scraper, new wheels and tires for the 962 loader, and replacement of used tires for the 950 loader, less than or equal to the amount of $30,000.
Thank you, Diane.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Kevin. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. Kevin,
Yes.
Diane,
Yes?
Chad,
Yeah.
Kaylin, yes, motion passes 4-0. All right, it is 6:40. So we were moving on to reports. Given that we got off to a late start, primarily due to my fault, let's try to do this remaining items with some quickness. District staff reports.
Mine will be quick. I do have some things I definitely want to point out, though. So, Diane facilitated some improvements at the recycled garden. It looks great. We put more mulch from the Moab landfill. Thank you so much to Diane, Utah Native Plant Society, and other volunteers, including Sarah Melnikoff from Moab Solutions. Diane may have a report on that too. It looks way better, and it's looking a lot more aesthetically pleasing for the CRC. We held our Cash for Cans on November 14th. I want to just definitely thank Poison Spider Bicycles and Moab Solutions for sponsoring the funds that were paid out to people that participated. We collected 1,430 pounds of aluminum cans during the 4-hour event. Last year was more. This year, obviously, with coronavirus and so forth, but it was still very successful in my mind. We've really enhanced our safety and health protocols with COVID, the new executive order from the governor, put some new signage out at the recycling center. But we are hoping to hold semi-annual events for this Cash for Cans moving forward with sponsorships from various local organizations. We had some money left over from this event, and I had LJ create a separate petty cash fund for CRC events. So we've got like $150 or something in there. So hoping to solicit new business sponsorships and support these, hopefully like an Earth Day, America Recycles Day kind of time frame on these. Tomorrow, CARES Act funding request is due to Grand County. I was going to work on that today. It's been very busy, and I've got the documentation. I just need to get that application put together and completed. We're going to be asking for approximately $30,000 that will improve our our overall budget for the year. And also tomorrow is the Recycling Coalition of Utah semi-annual conference. It's online. I met with the executive director, Brad Mertz, and he notified me about a week and a half ago that not only were we nominated, but we're being awarded, the Recycling Center is being awarded the Local Government Recycling Program of the Year in 2020 from the Recycling Coalition of Utah, which is awesome in my opinion. I think it's very well deserved, and our efforts have certainly paid off. Brad Mertz has been coming here for a decade plus, and Bo Peck, who's with Inner West Paper, he's I think the president of their board. So I think with both of their, knowledge of the history of this recycling center and to see where it's come in the past year and a half, they've, I think, a recognition well deserved for us. There will be a press release from RCU, and I'll plan to share that with the local media and so forth. And we will get a plaque as part of this too. So, so they wanted to put my name on there. I said, no, you're not putting my name. This is a group effort. This is a team effort. This has been, a long-term endeavor, and we still are planning, overall continuous improvements at all facilities, including the recycling center. So, so I'll definitely, hope to get photos with staff members with the plaque and get this in local media and get us, the recognition that we all deserve for what's the great transformation at the Moab Community Recycle Center. So I wanted to have that plug in there. So thank you for everyone, all the staff, board members, for supporting it, and we've come a long way for sure. So
thank you guys. Good job.
Yeah, congratulations. Good work.
Very good.
Thank you. So just a few things. So MSW trends have been up. We had a record for October, over 100 tons from last year above. Moab landfill was doing good. November's looking to be relatively decent. So fourth quarter is looking a little bit stronger than the average budget would suspect. So, keep tracking numbers and go from there. Mineral lease revenues continue to come in short. The third quarter DWS mineral lease I was expecting about 16K, and that's been coming in through the year, and that got cut again. It only came at 9,500. So, another kind of unfortunate loss. Mineral lease revenues that have just added up to a loss of our revenues. As I mentioned, we've wrapped up our health and safety protocol, signage, and other items related to COVID-19, the new state of emergency, the new executive order from the governor. Chris may want to mention something on this. Klondike landfill, we're receiving, so there's an I-70 project going on. We were contacted by Nielsen Construction several months ago saying, hey, we're bidding on this project. If we were to bring you asphalt tailings or millings from the highway for this project, would you accept them for free? And at that point in time, we said, yes, as long as you guys manage the pile. If not, we'll have to charge you equipment usage. So we're literally getting over 20,000 cubic yards of asphalt millings that it's for free, to charge for it when it makes sense. These are actually, we're getting like literally $250,000 of free material, if not more than that we'll be able to use for ongoing road improvements at Klondike. This is huge for us. Chris has actually done a really good job in planning, setting up piles. We'll be able to improve all the roads. We need some structural bridging material, but it's going to be a great topper to our roads and the road base that we've established. And with the trucks driving in it, it's already the trucks that are driving around. We're getting 15 trucks running daily. They're helping to actually compact and further structurize our roads at the landfill too at Klondike. So, did I miss anything on that, Chris?
No, that covers it.
And so it's actually a big project and a lot of logistics. Chris was out there the first few days and really helped to support the logistics, getting them right, creating one-ways, communicating with people that are bringing trash versus this material. And it's worked out really great. We're running staff on 4 10s to support the project. So instead of running 5 8-hour shifts, we're running 4 10-hour shifts. And the project has agreed, we're keeping staff, staff's getting an hour or 2 overtime per week. They've agreed to pay us an after-hours fee per day, one per day. So we'll actually getting a little bit of money to cover our extra expense, and it's giving staff the opportunity to get some more projects done that need to be done at the landfill. So overall, a very, very good thing. It'll end hopefully, mid-December, if not sooner. So, and then landfill tours, I think just another thing. I apologize. I had some unknown dental work that my mouth is still hurting, but There should be some new surveys for tours at Moab Landfill and CRC. I think given the state of emergency, the COVID thing, Klondike, we'd probably want to all drive separate. So I'm thinking we do Klondike tours next year. And we at least do a tour of Moab Landfill and the Recycling Center this year in December, hopefully. There should be a new survey, a new doodle poll for December for those two facilities. And that's all I've got. Sorry, I took more time than I probably should have.
Thanks, Evan. Are any other staff going to report? Very good. Does the board have any questions of Evan or anyone else? No. Great.
I would say we're emphasizing safety, especially during the pandemic. We're taking all these new executive orders very seriously, and we've taken a proactive approach on numerous things since the onset of the pandemic by closing the recycling center. But we've established and updated our signage and so forth. Jessica's looking at grants. We're still looking at USDA grants. But I'm considering we have a CIB grant loan out there, a CIB application for Klondike for $1.5 million. Given all of our equipment things, I think we need to take a serious look at that next year and decide, do we want to do a CIB grant for equipment and landfill upgrades at Klondike? So,
Great. Yeah. So next up are board reports. Do any board members have anything they'd like to report on?
Just keep up the good work, you guys. You're doing great. Thank you. Thank you. And I wanted to bring up one thing. Maybe this is future considerations, but we want to make sure the staff is honored for the holidays and some type of a turkey gift certificate, ham certificate, something like that, Evan. I think we talked about it today. I just want to make sure that's brought up.
Thanks, Kevin. It sounds like a good idea. The one thing that I have to report from the city is that we're still working. We received the next tranche of CARES funding, and so it's substantially larger. So the staff and council are working on possibly having this effectively a grant program to hopefully serve entities in our community that weren't beneficiaries of previous COVID relief monies. And I talked with Joel today, and one of the ideas that he mentioned was possibly opening it up to special districts. So there may be the opportunity for the district to apply with the city as well for some of that money. Won't be a huge amount, but as we know, every little bit helps.
That'd be great. Yeah, please keep us posted on that.
Yep, still working on the criteria. Any future considerations? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion that we adjourn this meeting.
Thank you, Diane.
Second.
Thank you, Kevin. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hi.
This meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you all. Good
Thank you.
job.
Good job, everyone.
Oh, so that's a